loves you, baby. You're beautiful.
A couple of years, things may change when all the kids grow up and start wearing ties and going to the polls.
You ever have that feeling where you're not sure if you're awake or still dreaming?
Any member of the police department who has allowed himself to get out of condition will either get back into condition or be weeded out.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. It's Lawrence Accountability Live. Got a special treat for you all tonight. We've got the two write-in candidates for Elk County Sheriff with us. And originally, we had kind of pitched this out as talking to David and getting his insights into the race and getting some questions from him. But reached out to Joe, and him and David both wanted to come on here and discuss it together. So I think that's what we're going to do, fellas. Joe, welcome aboard.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We'll give you 2 or 3 minutes here to let the people know a little bit about yourself. And there's a lot of people watching that haven't ever met you. And there's probably some of your neighbors that don't even know you all that well.
Probably. My name's Joe Mueller. I live here in Elk County. I've resided here for the last 14 years. I've been involved in emergency services for approximately 30 years. Well, probably better. I started when I was 16 on volunteer fire departments and got into EMS, went from EMS into law enforcement about 4 years ago. Worked for the Sheriff's Department down here, left there and worked for Caney, and I'm back at EMS full-time here in the county.
All right. So you're still a county employee working for EMS, and we thank you for your service there.
Thank you.
And then on the right side of your screen, we got David Helms, who's a write-in candidate for sheriff. David, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, I'm David Helms. I actually grew up in Elk County the majority of my life. I graduated out here at West Elk, and I'm running because I want to see a change around here and the way people are being treated. So let's get out and vote, people, and let's make that change happen.
Well, I don't think there's any disagreement about a change needed in Elk County. We've seen the way that the current situation is going, and it's just untenable the way people are being treated down there and threats being levied and such like this. We got some prepared questions. Let everybody know if you've got some good questions that are relevant to Elk County, drop them in the chat. Let's see some good questions there. I can't ask everyone, but if you've got a good one that you need some clarification on, or you think the other citizens down in Elk County need to know about, let's get it out there. David, I'll start with you because this question kind of originated with you. When I ran into you down in Longton back in July, you'd spoke about making the Elk County Sheriff better known and more respected at the local schools. I'd like to hear more from both of you about what your plan is to build those necessary connections with the youth in the community. David, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I remember that conversation. It was, I want to include myself into the schools a little bit more and make a presence known and be more available to go to youth events so the children actually can get to know me and feel safe and know that they can trust me. I want them to feel like they can approach me and talk to me without the fear of retribution. So, any questions on that?
That sounds like a great plan. Just making yourself available to the kids. What's that entail?
Oh, introducing myself for starters.
Well, you had mentioned that the county can't afford to have a SRO officer. Are you talking about somebody being in the school, or are you visiting the schools on a regular basis?
Oh, just visiting the schools on a regular basis.
Okay.
And hopefully speaking to classrooms and talking to the kids and going over certain topics. Drugs, big one. They need to know the dangers of them and what it can do to you.
Yep. And Joe, when I was talking to you, a subject that I can tell is close to you is the drug problem on the streets. So I know that'll ring true. But how do you make the connections to the youth that are necessary to try to curb that drug problem at the youth stage?
As a deputy, when I was here as a deputy, I tried to get into the schools at least once a shift and spend some time with the kids walking around the school. I used to be one of the canine handlers here. I discussed this prior to this with the school when we did a debate at the school. I want to get into the school more often, not just me, but my deputies if I win, and establish a connection with the community and the kids in the school, and put educational programs at least once a month together that we can go in and educate the children on different things, on how law enforcement works, how, what can happen with drugs and whatnot like that. Just general safety issues if possible, and maybe teach the kids a little bit about laws and get them interested in maybe becoming a law enforcement officer.
Okay. Now, when you say getting them interested in the laws, that kind of brings me to one of the questions I have here. And I'll go ahead and I'm going to skip to it. I want to talk to you both about that button at the courthouse, and some constitutional questions that have arisen in Elk County. We've learned that button to access the courthouse, it's basically a security measure that rings over to the sheriff's department, where they answer the door, ask who you are, where you're going to get in. And we've learned that was installed by a janitor in 2010 and has no ordinance or authority behind it. We know of at least one person who's being prosecuted over a situation that developed directly from that button being there. I guess my question to both of you is what, if anything, would you do to correct that situation or to resolve the questions, the constitutional questions about the button, and then furthermore the constitutional questions about the events that we've seen in Elk County in the last few weeks and few months about questioning people before they're requiring IDs and things like this. Joe, you've got the law enforcement experience. And was that button, I'm assuming, was there while you were a deputy?
It was installed prior to me becoming a deputy. So
right.
But from what I understand, and again, just watching your guys' stuff and watching some of the commission meetings, you're right. They said it was installed by a janitor, but in the last meeting that they had, either this one or the time before, they again stated that Judge Ricky is the one that instituted that button. I don't really want to get into the he said, she said on that aspect, because I don't know. But I do believe there was a ruling federally that stated the courts had a right to secure the courts. And now, with that being said, I do believe that there's a way to secure just the courts, which is the top floor. And I don't believe that they should be restricted into the public access areas of the Department of Revenue, Department of Register of Deeds, and the clerk's office. Those are all public entities. If they want security for that, then they need to hire some security for that.
Right. And would that be part of the sheriff department budget to hire security, or would you place that on court staff?
I would try to get it. I would try to get it placed on the commissioners, because it's their building. I mean, we shouldn't have to provide security for public access areas, but if they did, then I'd have to ask for an increase to cover that. Mm-hmm. My goal is not to increase the budget. I'm trying to figure out a way to reduce the budget, and I think I got a pretty good plan on that. Gotcha.
David, your thoughts on the button and the issues that have been raised about it? What, if anything, would you do about that, or how would you address that situation at all?
Well, I would definitely address it in having it removed, because I do believe it's a violation of the Fourth Amendment. Getting ID'd and questioned entering a public facility is just completely wrong. And if we do need to add extra security in the courtrooms, then we can do that when there's court. Now, the court doesn't go on all the time, and a lot of court cases now are done over Zoom. Mm-hmm. So having the security up there kind of, is just on a when needed basis, mm-hmm. kind of deal.
Yep. Now, I do want to point out to both of you, we did get to the bottom of the button as far as the documents or the things that were put in place. And there's not been any kind of ruling from Judge Ricky that has been documented that we're aware of, or that was documented back then. The only thing that was turned up that we've been made aware of is Carrie was able to pull up the minutes from a 2010 meeting where it was noted in there. That was the last we had. If there's been further documents, we haven't been made aware of those.
So to my knowledge, there hasn't been any further documents, but they did make note that they wanted to contact Judge Ricky and see if he would give them something that stated that he's the one who did it.
Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha. All right. So I want to back up to question right above. Now let's talk about some turnover. It's clear to anybody who takes a look at C-Post records that Elk County has had a severe turnover issue for quite a while. And some deputies lasted a month or two, some repeating service every other year or so, and then not going to training. We've seen all kinds of things. Now, it's not just been with the deputies, though. It's been with the office staff as well. There's been a high amount of turnover in the office. And I think we can probably all agree that the root cause of that is a problem at the top. That's how you have so much turnover generally, in my experience. How would you work to correct the turnover issues experienced in the department, both with the office staff and the deputies? Because there's surely different issues involving those, isn't there?
Oh, yeah.
And David, go ahead.
Yeah, you're right. That the turnover in the last 4 years has been significant from the past year's experiences. I've talked to a few of the former employees, both deputies and office staff. It's being overworked is a lot of the issue, and getting put in job duties that they're not qualified to do. And oh shoot, give me a second here.
Well, more than what the cause is, but how would you work to correct that? What kind of things are you going to do to correct the turnover to slow it down or stem it somehow?
Look at scheduling would be a good start. Figure out, keep people working, at, not more than 10 hours a day. That'd be a good start. Give me a minute. But talking to the deputies, the one anyway, the problem stems from not having an open door policy up there now. They fear for their job or retaliation if they go to management with an issue. Now, I'm the guy, you open a door, I run an open door policy. Mm-hmm. That's the way I operate things. You got issues, let's talk about them without the fear of getting yelled at, getting fired. That'd be a good start there too.
Joe, your thoughts on the turnover at the sheriff's department? I mean, you experienced it. You were one of them that turned over under Walker. Yep. What needs to happen in there to correct it?
Well, as far as turnover, I agree with David. People being trained for the position that they're in. If the dispatchers do double duty, they do dispatching and they do jailer duty. And they're not, most of them aren't trained or have any working knowledge of how a jail works or how a jail operates. So we need to do better training with them if we're going to continue to have that as a problem. As far as the officers go, Dave is not entirely wrong on that one either. Retaliation, anger issues. You can't run a department and be a boss. You have to run a department and be a leader. You have to show your employees that you care and that you're willing to make the changes that they might suggest, and even be willing to listen to some of the changes they might suggest. You just can't dictate how everything goes as the sheriff. It's not a way to operate and keep employees. And bringing experienced employees in is another plus. I mean, if you have experienced officers applying and working, then you don't have as big of an issue.
Mm-hmm. And talking about the problems with turnover there's a good question here. This is from John Dupuy down there in Elk County. Question for the candidates. We're tired of the corruption here. from the sheriff's office to the commissioners to our legal system. How are you going to address this? I'm tired of the good old boys club. That's a pretty good question. And I'd have the same question from what I've witnessed down there. Which one of you wants to address that?
I agree. The good old boys club's got to go. I apologize, David. I mean, you lived here. You were born and raised here. I have no connection to the community other than I care about the community for the last 14 years. That's why I volunteered on the fire department. That's why I was EMS. That's why I went into law enforcement, is because I genuinely care about the community I live in. I care about the people. You break the law, you break the law, whether you're family, your friend, or anything else. It's you break the law. You need to be held accountable for that. You can't just, oh, I know you, so I'm going to let you off on a warning. I've listened to the radio too many times on people getting pulled over for speeding or without a license or without registration. Oh, well, I know where this guy works, so I'm going to let him go.
Mm-hmm.
That's got to stop. Absolutely got to stop. And I will enforce that with my deputies.
Now, David, I think you agree on some of that stuff there. What do you say on stopping the corruption? The good old boys club.
Well, when we take an oath into office, basically, it basically says, I will have no prejudice. Well, I can't favor one thing and not another. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, the good old boy system can't do it. It ain't going to work. It just causes problems.
Well, and David, you mentioned the oath. There's been several allegations of rights violations over the past few years in Elk County, and I'm not just speaking of some of the recent ones. There's also the active civil suit that I think we're all aware of that's alleging even more severe violations by the deputies. Talk to me about that oath of office. You mentioned the oath. What does the words support and defend mean to you? What does protect and serve mean to you, David?
Well, support and defend the rights given to every citizen under the Constitution without prejudice. Yeah. Like we kind of jumped ahead a little bit there, from that question that got asked. So that means if I don't disagree with how someone is behaving, or if I don't agree with how someone is behaving, doesn't mean it's an arrestable offense.
Mm-hmm.
Being a jerk isn't against the law. Acting a certain way is not against the law. Unless you're breaking the law, then yeah, but being a certain person doesn't give the officer a right to detain or arrest them or anything like that.
What about if the commissioners are directing it? You've got some commissioners in there that seem to be a little more bold. Where does your line draw when it comes to the commissioners telling the sheriff he has to do something to somebody?
Well, that's the difference between a sheriff's department and a sheriff's office. The department takes orders from other entities. The sheriff's office does not, and that's what we got right now. Is a sheriff's department.
Okay.
And I'm going to run a sheriff's office.
Gotcha. Joseph, do you work for a sheriff's office or a sheriff's department when you were there?
Well, I got a sheriff's department doesn't take orders from anybody else. A sheriff's office does.
Okay.
So what I mean by a sheriff is an elected official. The commissioner shouldn't be telling the sheriff what he should or shouldn't be doing. And if the sheriff's allowing that to happen, that's kind of his bad. He shouldn't be allowing that.
Right. Yep. Can't agree more on that. The sheriff is an independent. I believe that the sheriff's an independent office. Now,
hey, I have this document here. I don't want me to read it, or can I hold it up? You guys can read it.
What document is it?
It's a definition of office of sheriff.
And I apologize. I did have that mixed up. Sheriff's office is elected. A department is run by the county or by the city or whatever.
There you go. I was going to say Janet Harrington just rang in there, and she's one of the former sheriffs down there. And no, Joe, you had it turned around, so it's good. You corrected it. That's good. Drug enforcement. We've touched on that before, that it's important in the schools. it's also a priority on the streets as far as, and I've said this before, I'm not after the guy that bought half a baggie from his friend. I don't want to call him the drug trafficker. I'm after the guy that's moving across state lines, and let's cut the big flow. And there's a difference between punishing your citizens and getting drugs off the street. We have a problem in the big cities where we use the laws to crack down, thinking that that's going to stop the epidemic. I think, in my own view, and I'll just tell you, my own view is that we need services in place to be able to cure that epidemic at the same time as we enforce the laws around it. What are your views on what you can do in a rural community that obviously does have monetary constraints, doesn't have the ability to have a clinic in every little small town and everything? How do you work your job in conjunction with the community around you to try to curb something with the drug issue and get a handle on the problem? It's just getting worse, and it seems like it's out of desperation that most times in these rural areas there's little else to do other than just look for the next time you can feel a little better. So Joe, why don't you start us there? You had brought up drug enforcement with me earlier.
Drugs are obviously an issue, and it's across the country, not just in our small community. It's a little more constraining to control in our community because we don't have the resources. We don't have the funding that a lot of the big cities have. I kind of disagree with David on decreasing our patrols on the highways, 99 and 160. Those are the two major highways we have here. I agree with him that we should be out patrolling the county also, but if we stop patrolling the highways, that's where most of our drugs are coming in from out of state and coming up through here and heading up to Kansas City and being distributed from Kansas City on through. So we need to increase the patrols, not decrease the patrols. Not every stop needs to be a ticket. I agree. But it should be an educational experience at the same time. We don't. I personally, when I was a deputy here, I didn't pull people over just to write them a ticket. I tried to educate them as to why we try to control the speeds through here. We have no shoulders on the highways. You go off the road with one tire, you've rolled that vehicle, and now we've got a whole nother situation. Mm-hmm. So if you're not out there patrolling and talking to the community, you don't know where the drugs are and what's going to happen and when they're going to come through. So patrolling is very important, and talking to the community and trying to find out information from them as to who they think the drug dealers are, or who's, using large quantities of, methamphetamine. And the worst one of all currently is the fentanyl that's coming through. And we've had a couple cases here with fentanyl. So
yeah, we've had a number of deaths up here in Lawrence from it. People I know. David, how do you address the drug issues down here, and how do you get the stuff off the streets and out of the kids? And that's Jeff Simmers put up a question here. How do you reach the young adults, and how do you get it out of their hands? Because it's easier more than ever to get it.
Well, I think it starts with getting the public's trust back, because right now the public doesn't trust the sheriff's department up there. So I got to reestablish that trust so the community can come talk to me and can tell me where these things are happening and actually act on it. Don't just say, oh, yeah, that's an active case we've been working on for 5 years. I won't give you an answer like that.
Okay. And then there's another question that pops up here regarding the drugs. Do either of you believe in harm reduction? David, you hit that one first. You guys both know what harm reduction strategies are, correct?
I'm not for sure on harm
Joe?
reduction.
Go ahead.
Well, I guess a quick definition of harm reduction strategies is a way to address the problem without increasing the harm, and also minimizing the harm as a result of the addiction. One of the most prominent ways
counseling and such like that.
Well, and we're even going beyond that. There are places where they have clean needle exchanges and things like that so that people aren't spreading disease, but they're still able to handle the addiction without doing the increased harm of spreading disease. What do you guys think of harm reduction tactics? And if you've not experienced them or not looked into them before, you may not have much of an opinion yet. But since neither of you do, I would strongly suggest both of you look into the harm reduction strategies, because what we're seeing is that there is a necessity to have some kind of underpinning to something to actually get it to hold. In homelessness, we call it housing first. They've got to have a place to keep all their stuff where it doesn't get stolen, so that they can start to rebuild their life. It's kind of the same way. You don't want them catching AIDS and dying while they're in the midst of this addiction that's got a hold of them. The doc, my partner here with Dreaded Accountability, he's online. He says harm reduction does not have to be the go-to standard, and I don't agree, or I don't disagree with that, but I believe it does need to be a part of it. I just ask you gentlemen to look into that.
Yeah, I'd rather not comment until we educate ourselves on that.
Right, that's fair. That's totally fair. And whoop, we already asked that one. And let's see. Guys, I'm going to leave it open for just a few more minutes here. We haven't gone too long. If there's any other good questions here that need to be asked. Now, Joe and David, I'm going to opine here just a little bit, because one of the things that we all know is that there's a split race here. And I, as a non-interested voter, am very concerned about John Walker keeping this election. I guess right now, I'm going to give you an opportunity to explain why all those votes that go against Walker should come your way. What's going to make you the better candidate than the other, and how are you more fit than the other to go in there and replace Walker? Because what we need to see is all those people that are rejecting Walker to vote for one of you and not both of you. Because if you split the vote, the reality is Walker's going to end up being your sheriff again. So what makes you the best candidate, Joseph? Down to give it a couple minutes. What makes you the best candidate, best choice here?
Well, after working there, I know what needs to be fixed. I know what needs to be done. Basically, it needs to be built from the ground up. It needs to be started all over again. It needs to be run more like a family, and by that I mean, you lead by leadership, and go out and gain the trust back of the public and the trust back of not just the county, but the surrounding counties, because we have a big issue. You go anywhere around the county, and you mentioned you work for the sheriff's office. People stand off from you. They don't want nothing to do with you. That needs to be repaired, because being as small as we are, and with the reduced budget that we have, we need to have the outside resources that are able to come in, understanding that, when they come in, they're not the ones in control of the situation. We are. But, the turnover rate is a big issue. Again, lead by leadership, not by dictatorship. There's a lot of things that need to change with that office, and it needs to start from the ground up. I mean, basically, we need to start the sheriff's department on the reset. And I think I can do that. I have the resources, the knowledge, and the experience to do that.
David, give us some time here. Why are you the best candidate to go in there and reform the sheriff's department, the one that's been somewhat out of control, that we all kind of agree?
Oh, yeah. Well, like I said, I've been talking about this. I've re-entered college, and by December 4th, I'll have my associates in criminology. And I'm going to use that knowledge that I've learned in the law classes of basically not get the county sued for infringing upon somebody's rights, for starters. And then, but yeah, I will agree with Mr. Mueller there that it needs to be rebuilt from the ground up.
There's a good question popping up here. I'll give you first crack at it, David, since you're up here. Do the candidates have an opinion on upkeep with training for staff and deputies?
That's an opinion on upkeep and training for staff and deputies.
I can address that.
Yeah, they need to be more educated. Yeah, very much so. They need protect and serve. That's a main one. They need to be trained on what the heck that means. And right now, they're not protecting and serving.
Joe, you said you could address that one.
They're required by statute to have 40 hours a year re-education or retraining. I believe that they should definitely have more than that. And things like stop and ID. We're not a stop and ID state unless you can prove they committed a crime, are about to commit a crime, or have broken a law. It's just as simple as that. So re-education and extended education above the 40 hours that's required is definitely needed.
Mm-hmm. Well, and for both of you now, we've seen a lot of criticism about the current county attorney. That's going to be an interesting relationship. How do you see your relationship with the county attorney? Joe, do you know Jill? Are you comfortable with her as a working relationship? Do you feel like that's going to be navigable for you?
I don't agree with everything Jill does. That's, and you're not going to agree with everything somebody does. Unfortunately, she's running unopposed, so she's going to be the next county attorney. If you don't feel you can work with her in some fashion and amicably, then you probably shouldn't be taking the office of sheriff, because you have to work with the county attorney.
Right. I want to push a little bit on that and say, now, does the sheriff, as the sheriff, would you see yourself having a little bit more control over the cases that she's bringing?
Most of the cases put before her are initiated by the sheriff's office, which means they suggest the charge. It goes over to her office. She decides whether the charge is going to go and stay what it is or go to something different. The sheriff's department has no control over that from that point. Okay. So,
David, are you going to be personally reviewing some charge sheets if questions arise?
I'm sorry.
Would you be personally reviewing some charge sheets before they're sent over?
Oh,
to the
yes,
attorney
yes. Every one of them will be reviewed and looked at before I turn them over. The officers won't be allowed to turn them in themselves. They'll have to go through me first, and then.
Okay. And then how do you see yourself as far as the one kind of gatekeeping some of those charges getting to her in the first place? And I don't mean gatekeeping charges from getting to her, but some of the stuff that's getting to her is a little outlandish, and it's filed by the sheriff's department.
Right. I'll agree with that. And that needs some, stopped. Our court system's overloaded as it is, and trying to prosecute every crime under the sun, that just backs it up even further and further. So right. It's jobs as an officer is to deal with issues on the street if you can. Court is the last place you want to be at. So if the problem can be helped or dealt with right then and there, then it needs to be done. But if it can't be resolved, then court's the next place.
Can I ask you to elaborate on that, Dave?
Elaborate on which part?
The courts should be the last resort. Are you talking about every single case?
Not every single case, no. But that's some of the cases that get prosecuted now. Yeah, Mike, you're right. They don't need to be in front of a judge.
Okay.
Like there was one instance
that's not 100% up to the sheriff's department whether it goes in front of a judge or not. Again, the sheriff's deputies and the sheriff himself write up suggested charges. The courts don't have to adhere to that.
Well, this brings up a good question. Now, there's a lot of confusion that I witnessed with law enforcement on the street. Define probable cause.
Probable cause is what you can prove happened.
Probable cause is what you can prove happened?
Yeah. That's the way I look at it. If I can't prove it happened, I'm not going to charge somebody with a crime.
Okay. And then what would be the difference between that and reasonable articulable suspicion?
Reasonable articulable is you previously murdered somebody. I can probably, if you're running from me, reasonably articulate that you might murder somebody again. There's a good possibility of that happening.
Okay. Now that one I might challenge just a little bit. I want to come back to that. David, probable cause.
Probable cause is having a suspicion that there is a crime being committed. Like you pull someone over. Well, I smell pot. Well, there's your probable cause. It's the pot smell.
Okay, is that probable cause or reasonable articulable suspicion, though?
Oh, yep. Well, I guess, yeah. The reason they were pulled over was the probable cause.
Okay.
And then you smelled the pot, then it becomes, yeah.
Joe, probable cause.
Probable cause is the pot smell. That would give you consent to search the vehicle, whether they agree to it or not. You have probable cause because you smelled it.
Okay.
Reasonable articulation means that I can articulate why I'm going to search that vehicle via the probable cause.
Okay. All right. And let's see here. I'm double checking. I've had a few questions coming in by text as well. And it looks like we've got those. Guys, any more? If you're spending more time, you're probably going to do it again. Yeah. Trying to see, guys. Well, if I have missed your question, guys, go ahead and put it in again. But Joe, I want to thank you for coming on, and I give you a couple minutes here to go out and give the voters one last look at you. Let them know what you think.
Yeah, I did. Like I said, I'm here to make change. I want to change for the positive. We need to bring back integrity and honor back to our community and to our county, which is our community, and rebuild the trust between the public and the sheriff's department. That's going to happen from the ground up. And on November 5th, vote for Joseph J. Mueller. I'm your man. I can make the changes happen.
Right. And David Helms, write-in candidate for sheriff.
Yeah, it's got to start with the change, and voting November 5th is going to help make that change. So get out and vote for David Helms November 5th. I'll make you proud, and I won't be a disappointment.
All right. And I guess I'll go one more time, guys. I'm being real serious here. I just love to see you two come together and get on one side or the other and just ensure that Walker's out of office. That's my worst fear right now, is that one or the other of you is going to make a good showing, but we're still going to be stuck with John Walker in office. But the voters are going to decide, and they're going to make that decision, and that's the only way it can happen in this country. And I want to appreciate both of you guys for coming on and being man enough to talk out the issues and be on the screen together. I appreciate that a lot about you guys. It already says that either one of you is going to be better than John Walker. So any parting thoughts before we close it out?
No, I'm good.
All right.
Good luck, Mr. Helms.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Good luck to both of you. And I want to remind everybody down in Elk County, you guys got to get out and vote. This is your election. One of these guys is going to be your new sheriff, or you're going to end up with the same old guy that you've had. So you need to figure it out down there and make sure you're going out and voting, guys. Thank you. And we're going to go ahead and close it out now. Thanks for watching.
I get high.